Hello, good evening for a night owl edition of Open Mic with Nerdy Neo. Thanks for if there's anyone there waiting already. Appreciate your patience. It seems my computer has been giving me tons of trouble and nothing but technical difficulties with audio, and more specifically, or not specifically, but something that's been giving me the most trouble lately is my internet speeds. It's barely giving me enough to stream. So that's been incredibly frustrating because it was doing it to me on Saturday right before party chat as well. So appreciate hanging in there while I was getting that sorted. So tonight, as usual for the open mic, don't really have much of a plan, but I do have an awesome guest that I just met in a chat recently on a live stream. We're chatting back and forth while the stream was going on. We're talking about video games. I'm like, hey, you want to come on and talk video games with me? He's like, yeah, let's do it. So let me bring in my guest. This is FatBeard. Hello, thank you for joining me.
Hello, sir. How are you?
Doing well. How are you?
I am doing excellent.
Awesome. So, is this your first time on YouTube?
In fact, it is. I've been thinking about doing it for a while. My brother and I love to co-op games, and one of the things we like to do is just talk a lot about the game we're playing. And I figured, one of these days we should capitalize that, hop on YouTube and do it. But yeah, and I really do appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you're here because I didn't have. I'm an only child, so I don't have a brother. But the other part of that about talking about video games is basically why I wanted to start my channel too. I've wanted to start my channel for probably like 3+, maybe close to 4 years. I just wasn't able to due to my real life schedule. But my schedule changed just recently, so it gave me a little bit more time, and so I was able to start my channel. And there's a lot of channels that talk about video game news and stuff. But it's like no one that I found like just talks about games, except for I came across a couple just recently that I've gotten really plugged in with the Melee Games crew, which is I think the stream that we connected on, where they talk a lot about video games. But that's all I do here is just talk about video games, what I've been playing, anything gaming related, not necessarily anything news related, although I have thought about doing like a weekly news show, but that's kind of still going on in my head. But yeah, if you've watched any of my previous streams, that's basically all I do is talk about video games because I love video games. I love talking about it, and I'm much more interested in listening to people talk about games than watching people play games. So I totally get you when you say it sounds like that's kind of what you want to do as well. So when you get started, I will definitely be watching your stuff too.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. Watching a lot of I watch a lot of both. I try and watch as much like you do of people talking strictly games as I can. And like you said, it's not easy to find. There's not a whole lot of people that do strictly game talk. I do watch a lot of people play games. I'm one of those people who are obsessed with games like Dark Souls. So of course I watch a lot of Dark Souls related content and that kind of thing. But yes, I actually did catch a stream of yours recently where you had Mark the Cyborg and I forget your other guest, but it was a great stream.
If it was the most recent episode of Party Chat, yeah, Mark is one of my usual co-hosts, and then the guest host for the most recent episode of Party Chat was my buddy Alex from the Salty Nerd Podcast. Is that the one that you watched?
Salty Nerd Podcast. That was a great podcast. I loved watching that. And he's such a great guy. I've been following him. I've watched quite a few of his streams, and of course, I found out about him through Friday Night Tights and his girlfriend X-Ray Girl.
Well, they used to be his girlfriend, now it's his wife. But yes.
Well, actually, yeah. I'm sorry, I should have correct myself about that. I knew that, but I slip of the tongue. But yeah, he's a great guy. I love watching a lot of streams. He's very insightful about games. He's got a lot of great
knowledge on everything.
Oh yeah, he has that ability to tear into something in depth, and I really like that. And when you're chatting with him in his stream, he does a great thing. He talks to everybody in his chat, and he really like goes into what they say to him, and he thinks about it. He doesn't just look it over and go, whatever. He actually talks to people, and I really love that about him.
Yeah, sometimes someone will put something in the chat, and he'll go off on like a 10-minute tangent just talking about that, and then he'll clip that out and put it out as a video. And
they make excellent videos too.
Exactly. Yeah, I just watched one of them today from. I don't remember what it was. I was listening to it while I was working, so I wasn't watching it. But I'd go back and look at my view history, and I could see it. But I just remember it was good, whatever it was he was talking about. But yeah, he's got knowledge on like freaking everything, which is one of the reasons why I was like, I really hope because I'm a mod on his channel because I've been following him for years. And so when I finally started my channel, I was like, I really hope I can. So I really want to get Mark on my podcast to talk about video game stuff. So he's like, yeah, as long as it works in my schedule, I'll be there. So, but yeah, my other usual co-host on Party Chat is Ryan from Legion Games, but he's been having a lot of stuff going on in his real life lately. He's been moving across the country, and then he's having some family stuff go on, so he's missed the last couple Party Chats. But he's a good guy too. If you ever can see him, if you watch another Party Chat, I'm sure he'll be back at some point.
Well, I of course will. I thoroughly enjoyed the last one, so I will be catching the future ones.
Yeah. So, and Alex from the Salty Nerd podcast, he was actually the first guest on episode 1 of Party Chat as well, but it was very short. He because his channel, the Salty Nerd podcast, they do a Saturday stream as well, and so I usually start mine at 11:30, and theirs ends at 30 minutes later at noon. So he hopped in, and then I had to cut that one short because I was going to go see a movie like right after. So he got in basically for like 20 minutes. So I was like, I'll have to have you come back because I'm pretty good buddies with him. So I was like, we'll have to have you come back so we have a longer discussion at some point. And so this last episode, he's able to make it on for the whole time. And so we had a great discussion. So yeah. But yeah, so before we kind of get into whatever it is that we end up talking about, I got my buddy Jacob Ironside here. What's up, Jacob? He hasn't really done it in my chats, but I see him in a lot of other chats, like my other buddy that I messaged you about earlier today, JT Gunn. He's a good buddy of mine, and he's the graphic artist who designed my logo. And Jacob Ironside that's where I met him, is in JT Gunn's live streams. And Jacob Ironside is always dropping dad jokes. So I love dad jokes. So Jacob, if you got a dad joke for me, definitely drop it in chat. I always love seeing his dad jokes.
Well, I don't know if you'll like it, but I actually have a bit of a dad joke if you'd like.
Okay, go for it. I love them.
So a blind man and a sailor walk into a bar, and the blind man turns to the sailor and says, "Didn't see it either."
Blind man and a sailor. Which one's turn to which one?
The blind man turns to the sailor and says, "You didn't see it either."
Oh, it walks into a bar. Okay. That's very similar to an old blonde joke I used to know. Is one of my favorites. It was like a blonde walks into a bar, another blonde walks into a bar, third blonde ducks.
Oh, that's such a great joke.
So it took me a second, but it's like, oh, I see what you're doing there.
That's what I like, the jokes that take you a little bit of a second, but I do also like the ones that are blatantly dumb. I have a thing for very dry, dumb humor. One of my favorite jokes I ever heard came from MASH, the old TV show.
Okay. I've never been interested in it, so I've seen maybe 20 minutes of that show.
Well, one character is trying to antagonize another character, so he's telling bad jokes, and he says, "Knock, knock." And he obviously says, "Who's there?" And he replies, "Abraham Lincoln."
Abraham Lincoln? Who?
"Don't you know me?" And then he groans, and the next joke is, "Knock, knock."
Who's there?
"Benjamin Franklin."
Benjamin Franklin who?
"Was Abraham Lincoln just here?" Exactly. Terrible jokes like that. That's always been my forte. I've never been great at telling jokes, but the thing is, they are a great way. They're great icebreakers, I think.
Yeah, I love the jokes where you're like, ah. They're like, no, that wasn't funny. I'm like, ah.
It's exactly when it makes someone else suffer, it's better. It makes you laugh, but not them.
Yeah, and I'm like, come on, and then they start laughing, but they're not laughing at the joke; they're laughing at me, trying to make them laugh.
So. Absolutely.
So, all right, well, so let's see here to kind of kick it off. Tell me a little bit about your gaming background. What were some of the systems you've had, or what's some of your favorite genres? Basically, tell me anything about your gaming that you want to bring up.
Well, I can tell you one thing that's interesting about me. Unlike most people, I didn't quite have a normal childhood. I got burns on my hands when I was very young, and
Oh,
unfortunately, because of that, I had to spend a lot of time in a place called the Shriners Hospital for Crippled Children. And obviously, going through a lot of surgeries and having to spend a lot of time in a hospital bed, I wasn't able to go outside and do a lot of normal kid stuff. And so, of course, video games were my escape, big time. And it amazes me because I got a chance to play pretty much all the systems as they came out. Didn't own them, was a little too poor for that. Owned a few of them, but mainly I was lucky enough to have a lot of friends who had these things because one benefit of being in a place like the Shriners Hospital is you do make a lot of friends for a long, kind of like a lifetime kind of thing.
okay.
And yeah, so it for me, it's one of those things where it's near and dear for me because it's important to me. And I will say it started all obviously. I was born in '87, got into it when I was about 5 or 6. So one of the first games I played was Mario on the Nintendo, and was crazy
Okay.
about it. So that's pretty typical for a lot of gamers. Their first game, especially around my age group.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm assuming we're probably pretty close, given that your first was an NES. You might have me by a little bit, but yeah, my first was a Super Nintendo that came with Super Mario. So
and Super Mario was one of the best games ever.
I know people do. I'm not big on the Mario franchise, but I do know that a lot of people, when they're ranking Mario games, they usually put Super Mario World pretty high up there.
Yeah, it's pretty typical for most. I think it was so popular that it was just prevalent in a lot of kids' life at that
Hmm.
time. There was also things obviously like Sega and Sonic, which I was lucky enough to have both a Genesis and a Saturn growing up.
Okay.
And I got to play a lot of strange games there, like on the Saturn. Not a lot of people had Saturns, and that
Yeah,
was surprising to me when I grew up.
yeah, and I only knew one person that had a Saturn. I rarely ever went over to his house, so and that was the only time I've ever even seen a Saturn. So, the only game I remember being on the Saturn was the Knights. You know, with the K, you're like the floating, like you like float around. And you're like this kind of like jester clown. You know what
Yeah,
I'm talking about?
yeah, Knights is a great game. There's actually quite a few of them. What most people played was the demo that got released for it because it was just, I think it was one of the things that came with the Saturn.
Okay, maybe that's what it was. I don't remember playing much of it, but I remember thinking it was pretty cool. You know, however long ago that was.
Yeah, it's an interesting game. It's a bit of a trip going back to it now because it's not your typical game. A lot of games on the Saturn were very strange, very Japanese games, which I really liked. I mean, it's its own thing. It's niche, but it's an interesting thing, part of gaming that exists.
So it sounds like you're pretty, at least somewhat well versed on the Sega console, because I never had a Sega console. Although one of my good buddies had the Genesis, so I played a good amount of Genesis at his place. And then his neighbor was the buddy I was just mentioning who had a Saturn eventually. Um, Now, what is, if you know the answer to this? If not, that's cool. But the if you could clarify for me the difference between the Saturn and the 32X, were those different things or were those different names for the same thing?
So they were different things, although they did share some games. The 32X was a system that you pretty much paired on top of the Genesis, and it was actually weird because the 32X was the second part add-on. There was another add-on that you had to put before that, so it looked monstrous when you plugged this thing in.
So
But
it's
it was
basically a Genesis with
a
Frankenstein
CD.
parts attached
Yeah,
to
well,
it.
exactly, and they basically pumped it up to a CD playing system, similar to the Saturn. Like I
Hmm.
said, they did share some games. The Saturn was more powerful. It was more on par with the PlayStation, although not as powerful. The PlayStation was unique because it had a quad core processor in it, whereas like the
Okay.
64 had a single core, and the Saturn also had a fairly beefy single core, but a single core.
So would the 32X then kind of be equivalent to the more modern consoles like half steps like the Xbox One X or the like the PS3 or 4 Slim or whatever?
The beefy PS4, yeah, I would say that's definitely what it's like. It's an in betweener
Okay.
console.
I was gonna say I don't think it's like a full-fledged sequel console. That would have been the Sega Saturn, right?
No, that was Sega desperately trying to save money and failing.
Ah, okay. Gotcha. Because yeah, I don't think the Saturn did too well, given it was their last console. No,
Actually,
oh
the
wait, no, that's
Dreamcast
right. The
was.
Dreamcast.
And
I was
the interesting thing is the Dreamcast did well, but it didn't do well enough. You're absolutely right about the Saturn. Part of the problem with the Dreamcast is,
it was
although it
too
was a
soon.
little, it was a little popular, but at the same time not enough, not compared to the N64 or the PlayStation. And they tried desperately to fix that with the Dreamcast, the Saturn not being popular. They tried to remedy that within a couple years, and that was a misstep because neither of them were popular enough. In reality, if they had saved the money from the Saturn to invest in the Dreamcast, they could have made a system on par with the PS2 long before PlayStation did. But that kind of diverting all their funds into a failure, and then again it is something that was sort of successful but not enough. And then
Okay.
obviously we know the history of Sega. Unfortunately, after that they got relegated into becoming a
Software only.
publisher and then a developer.
Yeah, because I knew one other friend who ended up having a Dreamcast. I think that was the only time I ever played it, and I think the only Dreamcast game I ever played was Crazy Taxi. But
Excellent game, by the way.
I yeah, it was pretty fun. But like everyone that you ever talked to about Dreamcast, like loved the Dreamcast. Like it was no one ever had anything bad to say about the Dreamcast, but yet it still failed. It's just kind of ironic. I heard people say that it was before its time. It should if it came out later, it would have done better. Um,
It was more powerful than the PlayStation, but it didn't have long before the PS2 came out, and that was really that after that one.
yeah, with the still the highest selling console of all time.
Oh yeah. And even though the GameCube wasn't the most popular thing, it really did kind of trounce on it or dance on its grave rather when it came out a little bit later because there was just no popularity left for anything else.
Yeah. I just saw a video a couple weeks ago, basically about like 10 things like the Dreamcast like innovated and that nothing had done at that point, and some of the other consoles still haven't done to this day. I don't remember what they were, but it was a pretty interesting video. And then it was right around the time I saw someone saying along the lines of like, it's a bummer we never got a Dreamcast too, and they're like, we did. It's called the Xbox because a lot of what went into the Dreamcast actually got put into what became the Xbox after that, which was
Oh
pretty
yeah, a
interesting. I'm
lot
like,
of
I
people
did not
don't
know that.
know. Yeah, Microsoft got a lot of what Sega was doing into the Xbox. And the great thing about it is when Sega did get a bit of a revival because they were allowed to continue a whole bunch of Sega properties on the Xbox. Unfortunately, that didn't really help them out in the long run, but that more came down to bad decision making in the modern times with their publishing as opposed to anything that happened with the Xbox. They did great. I mean, uh, one of my favorite series on the Saturn was called Panzer Dragoon, and that game
Okay,
actually did get a sequel on the Microsoft Xbox, which was amazing to me. I never thought we'd see it again. So
I've
there
never
was.
played it, but I know of it, and I do know that it was on the original Xbox because one of my buddies was like, he loved the game and he would talk about it a lot.
And if you're interested in trying it out, by the way, they actually did a bit of a remake and released it on Steam. So it is actually playable on Steam now. At least the first game. I'm not sure if they're going to continue remaking them for the second and third, but there was also, strangely, a very rare RPG on the Sega Saturn that was based on the Panzer Dragoon games that was very strange but very fun.
Do you remember what that was called?
I believe it was Panzer Dragoon Sagas.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't.
So what's cool? It's basically you fly a dragon. It's
Okay, I've
a
seen
sort of a
video
shoot
of
'em
that.
up. Yeah, it's sort of a shoot 'em up, but a little more three dimensional. And in the first one, it's more about sort of like experiencing the strange story that's happening and then, the hardcore combat. But the second game expands on it and you actually have a dragon that evolves into cooler dragons. And depending on which paths you take in the level, it will go through different evolutions and give you different end game powers. And it was a very fun game where you just rode on a dragon and just blew everything apart. And it was a little bit
Cool.
weird because they didn't really breathe fire. They shot lasers, but it was still fun.
It sounds kind of Star Fox-ish.
Oh,
Would you say
absolutely.
that's
Yeah, I
okay?
would say in the same vein of Star Fox. Probably not as tight or as good controlling as Star Fox, but definitely good in its own right.
Okay, cool. I had well, after you mentioned that, I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I have seen videos of that because when you mentioned it at first, I had like a completely different image in my head of what the game was. But then when you mentioned that, I was like, oh, you know what? I have seen clips of that game before.
Yeah, and it's fun. If you're into the Star Fox thing, you'll definitely enjoy it.
So Jacob Ironside came in here with what I believe is a dad joke. Is there anything worse than when it's raining cats and dogs? Yes, hailing taxis.
Oh, that's just flat out true.
Yeah. I'm gonna hit the hey. All right, good night, Jacob Ironside. I will catch you later, bro. So okay. So go ahead and shut this down if you don't really want to get into it. I totally get it. But you mentioned earlier about your hands. Do you have still pretty much full functionality with them then to play games, or do you use like adaptive controllers or something?
So I haven't had to resort to adaptive controllers, although I do have to play in a bit of a funny way. So typically, if you're holding an Xbox controller, you're using your two thumbs, your index fingers, and your middle fingers.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, my middle fingers have quite a bit of weakness because of the scars.
Hey, you're right there. It was getting pretty bad. Every couple minutes for like 30 seconds or so, you're cutting in and out. Do you think there's anything going on your end?
Let me see about that.
Because I've been able to get what you've been saying so far every time it happens, but that time it was really bad and I couldn't quite get what you were saying.
Perhaps I should sit a little closer to the mic.
Because
Am I
it
still?
sounded like technical, like your maybe like the internet or your mic or something was cutting out, and it's been happening every couple minutes for like 30 seconds at a time.
Oh man, I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know it's definitely not intentional, but just wanted to let you know that it's been happening because so far you have still been able to understand what you're saying, but right there on that last one, it was breaking up worse than the rest, so I couldn't quite understand what you were saying.
All right, I'm double checking everything. It seems to be okay.
Okay.
Um, let's see if I can close some things down. Make sure I don't got anything extra running in the background.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know if it's internet related or computer power related. But yeah, you were saying about the fingers that you normally use on your Xbox, and then I didn't catch what you were saying after that.
All right. So, you normally use your thumb, your index finger, and your middle fingers for
Mhm.
the left and right triggers and bumper buttons. I have to use my ring fingers along with my middle fingers to also use those. So I kind of got a weird crab grip when I play games.
Okay. I had to when I played. So one of my favorite franchises on the Super Nintendo was the Mega Man X trilogy, and I basically played kind of like this so that you can dash and jump and charge and shoot at the same time.
Oh,
So I
I've
played
seen
kind
that
of like
before.
that. I had to
I've
basically
seen
play like that.
speedrunners do that before. It seems to be more effective for pressing a lot more buttons. So you no longer have to rely on your thumbs. So you have like four additional ways to press those buttons instead.
Yeah, it's a lot better now with that on like an Xbox controller because you can remap the buttons. But back then on the Super Nintendo, when you didn't have that option, that was basically the only option.
That's absolutely true. I hadn't thought about that. You really couldn't. You get used to the modern controls and being able to change them.
So, but so you basically have close enough full functionality. You can play pretty much anything with the controller. Then,
Fairly well too. But mainly my issue is it's lack of strength in my hands. But thankfully, a game playing on a controller doesn't typically require a whole lot of strength.
yeah. Okay. So, um, so what have you been playing anything lately?
As of recently, I have been playing an RPG called Shadowrun, Shadowrun
Oh, the
Dragonfall.
RPG one. Okay, the only Shadowrun I played was when they rebooted it on the 360 as a third person, or not a third person, but a first person, like a not a hero shooter, but class-based shooter.
Yeah, it was interesting for what it was. It wasn't really Shadowrun. I think Shadowrun was more of like a flavor thrown on to the game itself. But
Yeah.
Shadowrun is interesting. It's like Cyberpunk in that it started as a pen and paper, and that was real popular in like the early '90s and whatnot. Although I'm
Yeah,
sure people still play today.
yeah, I had never heard of Shadowrun until that game came out, so I was like, "Oh, this looks pretty cool." And then I didn't get really into it. Because it was basically only online. I didn't end up playing a lot of it, but I did kind of listen to the community, and people were like, "What? This isn't Shadowrun." And I found out more about Shadowrun being like an actual RPG, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, this is nowhere near what I would expect it to be if I was a fan of the franchise."
Well, if you ever get interested, it's like Cyberpunk in the sense that you have a lot of um, metahumanism, and cybernetics and that kind of thing. But you add in like orcs and trolls and dwarves and magic, and so
Yeah,
it's sort of a little bit more Tolkienized than Cyberpunk.
yeah. Yeah, it was pretty interesting. I liked what I did play. It's just being an achievement hunter and a completionist. All the achievements were for online multiplayer, and you had to have like at least 6 people or maybe 8 people for it to even count. And it was like get 100 kills with this weapon and this weapon and this weapon, and get 100 kills as this class and this class. So it was kind of annoying. I wish you just could have played it with bots, because I'm much more of a single player gamer. So if I'd prefer to do on multiplayer games like that against bots than actual people.
Oh, I'm the same way. I enjoyed playing Call of Duty's campaign, but not so much the multiplayer.
Same here. I got pretty decently into Modern Warfare 2 multiplayer just because I had a couple of buddies who were really into it, so I just played with them. I never played it on my own, but I played it with them because it was fun to hang out with them. But yeah, I wish you could play because the earlier Call of Duties, at least Modern Warfare 2 and before, even though they were hugely popular in multiplayer, there was no achievements in the multiplayer. It was all in the single player campaign, which I was really a fan of. Then later on, they started adding achievements into the multiplayer, and that's basically when that's not the sole reason why I stopped playing Call of Duty games, but it was definitely a factor in it. I would like to go back and play a lot of those, because I did hear that some of the campaigns in them were really good. Just the multiplayer wasn't very good, which is why I think a lot of people didn't like Infinite Warfare or Advanced Warfare. I'm not even sure which one it was.
Yeah,
Uh,
most of the hate for the Call of Duty's games came from the fact that the multiplayer was heavily disliked, and that's what those games really sell themselves on. They don't really sell themselves on the single player. But
yeah,
like you said, to their credit, things like Ghost and the one that took place in space, those had actually pretty decent stories.
they looked like it. So I'd like to go back and play them, but they have all these multiplayer achievements that I don't really want to deal with. So if the once this Activision Blizzard thing goes through, it's likely that all the Call of Duty games will come to Game Pass. So at that point, I may come around on it and end up playing them, because I've put them on my wish list, and the Call of Duty games themselves go on sale all the time for pretty cheap. Although I would think, given how old they are, that they would be cheaper when they go on sale. Um, but the DLCs for them like rarely, if ever, go on sale. So I have this gripe about some 360 games where the game itself goes on sale for like $2 all the time, but the DLCs don't go on sale ever. And so you can get the game for $2, but the DLC is $20. It's got two $10 DLCs. It's like that. Why is the DLC, you know, 10 times more than the game?
Oh yeah, and
So
that's silly. A lot of that's one problem I have with Steam is that there are a lot of games that still have like egregious DLC where the game itself is like $2.50 now, but all the DLC is like $60 still. And there's a lot of games that publishers like Capcom decided to chop up into little pieces. Resident Evil, what is it called? I forget which series it was. Resident Evil Revelations, I think. Revelations 2. The whole game came out in pieces. And
Okay.
thankfully they did eventually release a pack for it where they included it all. And it was fairly cheap. It was like $5. But it's just there's a lot of games that don't do that.
Yeah, it's kind of like we were both in Melee's because they're recording the Melee Madness podcast right now while we're talking. We were in the chat beforehand. They were talking about DLC, how like uh, Dead or Alive 6 is one of the most egregious DLC games like of all time because there's like I've looked at the DLC because I've never played. I played Dead or Alive 3 a little bit because my roommate had it in college. But fighting games is not one of the genres I really do. So I've never really played much of any of the fighting franchises. But I did look at the DLC for Dead or Alive 6 because I heard how bad it was. And yeah, there's like when I looked at it, this is probably a couple years ago, there was like 6, 7, 8 season passes with nothing but like cosmetics, and they were each like between like $40 and $80. Plus, there's like all these microtransactions for like hair colors, and I think they changed this, but I know when it first came out, you could pay to change like your hair color or whatever. But then if you wanted to change it back, you had to pay again. I believe that got patched out because of they were pushing it too far. But yeah, the amount of DLC for that game is just ridiculous. However, I do believe that Dead or Alive 6 is free to play, so that is somewhat forgivable, I guess.
Sort of. One of the things about how Dead or Alive works is each character has their own story, and in a lot of cases in that free to play version, you could have access to a handful of characters but not their stories. So you had to pay for their stories, other
Okay.
characters, their stories, and the characters were being sold at the time. That may have changed now, but when it came out, the characters were being sold separately from their stories, and it was pretty egregious just how much. Like, there was a meme going around at the time that they were going to patch out the jiggle physics and charge you 50 cents to turn it back on. I mean, it's
That would
quite
not surprise
ridiculous.
me.
Yeah, exactly. It was pretty egregious behavior, but unfortunately, that's the thing with gaming. Now that you've got me on this topic, I think I'll tell you something that I've been brewing in my head for a while.
Go for it.
um I want to make a mobile game, right? This is going to be like 40 chess, right? Like, it's going to be insane, right? I want to make a mobile game that isn't predatory. And that's it
Okay.
right there.
Oh,
That's the whole
I know
idea.
that's the
That's the
big brained idea.
exactly.
It's not predatory.
That's all I
What?
want to do. I want to make it good. I
That's
want
what
to
mobile
make
games are based on.
I want to make it cheap. I want to make it one of those games where because there's a handful of them that exist that do this, where how they have a point shop that it's $1 for 75 coins. I want to
Yeah,
make
for the
it
premium
where,
currency.
yeah, the premium currency, I want it to sell a whole bunch of stuff that's like a quarter or 50 cents, but I also want to make it to where one coin is equivalent to like 1 cent. You know what I mean? Of course, you also have to get into separating uh, the countries out and how much people pay, because you don't want a Canadian paying an American cent, because an
Oh,
American cent's
yeah,
worth too much for them, or worse, a UK cent, something that's
yeah,
very
because
expensive.
pounds are worth more than the dollar.
Yeah, quite a bit. A pence is worth far more than a penny.
Yeah, um,
But
it's
I would love to try and do something. I don't think it would be hard. Make a mobile game that people actually enjoy playing, that just has a bunch of cheap stuff, that it's free to play, very cheap. You'd still make a bunch of money. You'd probably actually make a lot more money because people would be more willing to pay for something that's 25 cents.
yeah, it's like it, I guess you could call it a meme, but like I've heard it from bunch of different places. It's like, developers don't want to make money; they want to make all the money. So it's like it's like, don't worry about making all the money; just worry about making money and have it be good and be fun.
And it's not exactly a meme in some cases. If you look at the projections of companies like Ubisoft and EA, they are on this constant hunt to make their bottom line even bigger every year. It's as if it doesn't double, we've failed. And that's like a horrible way to look at it. You and I, we're happy with working a job where we're getting a bit of a raise every once in a while, but we're consistently working for the same amount of money for the most of the time, and the
Yeah,
raises are small and often hard earned. Well, that's how you'd like a company to behave, but oftentimes they get so bloated and big that they think that they can just kind of, I mean, look at FIFA. They're not exactly wrong. People will pay for these things, even if they get
unfortunately.
egregious. Yeah. And, but I think that you can undercut them and outsell them if you make a cheaper game. But the problem is you have to make something good that people want to play. But there is another meme to mention, is that oftentimes their games come out broken and they don't bother fixing them.
Yeah.
And that's with the egregious pricing on top of it. So you can see how that compounds and how people genuinely just kind of get a very toxic feeling when they think about companies like EA and Ubisoft.
Yeah, it's especially one of the biggest insults in the world is when they come out with these press releases about like we made, 28% more than last year, and then they're firing all of the developers, the whoever writes the code, and they go and hire new people for the next one because they don't want to keep them employed unless they're using them. While Bobby Kotick, the CEO of Activision's, is getting these huge multi-million, close to billion-dollar bonuses every year. It's like, what the heck are you doing? You're bragging about making all this money, but you're not going to pay your devs, and you're giving your CEOs these gigantic bonuses. It's like, no wonder
Yeah,
nobody likes you.
yeah. Bobby Kotick has had some very nasty proclivities, but when it comes to how he talks about his business, unfortunately, he does brag about how much he pays himself. It's unearned considering the state of their content right now. And Kotick's actually in charge of Blizzard.
Blizzard, okay.
Now Blizzard does own Activision, but the interesting thing
I
about
thought it
it,
was the other way around.
I think you might be right. What I meant to say is the interesting thing about it is they both still have their own autonomy to
Yeah.
each other. So Kotick is still very much in charge of Blizzard. But it's like that meme. Don't you guys have phones? It's like they've completely lost touch. They've so much lost touch. And
Yeah, Diablo Immortal.
you hear guys like Asmongold. You watch just a handful of his videos about WoW, and you really get a sense that people who love this game, who are diehard fans, hate Blizzard right now.
Yeah, I've talked to a few people. I don't know if it was on stream, but I've talked to a few people lately that are, they just hate him because, yeah, like the Diablo Immortal debacle, the Warcraft 3 Reforged. I
Oh,
guess,
that nightmare.
yeah, the Overwatch, where they basically got rid of Overwatch 1 to replace with Overwatch 2. You can't even play Overwatch 1 anymore and the reason why they were making Overwatch 2 is because they're adding single player content, and they're like, nope, never mind. We're getting rid of that. And what have they been doing with WoW lately? Has that been doing very well? I don't know about lately.
You haven't even heard about it, but there's an expansion coming out.
Okay. I'm
And
assuming
they
that's
just
try to
haven't.
help
Yeah,
bolster
they're
their numbers.
trying, but they haven't really been advertising it well. They're right now. If you watch a channel like Bellular, you're more likely to hear about their sexual harassment case than you are to hear about updates to WoW. And
Yeah.
that's the state of things, unfortunately.
Yeah. So, man, I was gonna say something else a few minutes ago, but now I don't remember what it was. um, but yeah, oh yeah, we were talking about DLC. Oh, that was what I was gonna say. Is that especially with mobile games, that's basically what they're predicated on is selling their microtransactions for like $1, whatever. And just having people like pay money for like literally everything in the game. It's like I almost want to go back to the good old days of mobile gaming when it was, you'd pay, like $5 or whatever for the game, but then you got everything in it. And now they've basically done away with that model entirely. It's like, no, now they're all free to play, but they just, milk your wallet for all the all the change that you got for, oh, you've played too much right now. Give us $1 to speed up the recharge time so that you can play some more. It's like
Yeah,
ability or
nickel
time
and
gating.
diming you for everything. And
Yeah.
the thing about it is, you look at Raid Shadow Legends, and they have so much stuff that's like priced over $15 to $30, and it's one of those things where it's not just the price of things; it's also the predatory, like trying to get you addicted to a gambling mechanic, and that's really bad. That's really shady to do as a
Yeah.
company, especially when you present it as free to play, because that's something you open up to such a huge market. Because of course, someone wants to try something that's free to play, especially if it looks nice.
Yeah. But yeah, that's basically their gateway drugs into your wallet.
Pretty much, yeah. They're the dealer, unfortunately.
And what's up, Paul Hadouken? Dropping in here to say hi. I know I saw you over in Melee Madness chat before I went live as well. So thanks for hopping in and saying hi. Um, are you a fan of South Park?
Absolutely, I love South
Okay.
Park.
Yeah, I had never really seen anything past like the first 2 seasons of South Park until probably like I don't know, like 5 or 6 years ago, and now I've seen basically all of South Park. But it's talking about I remember an episode of South Park uh about the mobile games, and they were built basically there was really nothing in the game other than like just tapping on these little coins to collect them, and it got like everyone addicted. And
And that was a
you know
really great episode too.
and correct me if I'm wrong, but it was Canada was making the money off of that. Is that right?
So, yeah, something like that. Yeah, it's good
So
stuff.
be,
It's true. There's a lot of mobile games that you see people play that are very mindless and very expensive at the same time. But sometimes, to be fair, sometimes I think some people just want something simple to do, just off, mindlessly.
yeah. Yeah,
I don't think it's a good thing to do, but people do it.
yeah, I'm a ridiculously frugal gamer, so and I've barely played over the years. I've barely played any mobile games. I was talking with someone recently on one of my streams. One of the only like mobile games that I got really really into, but I never I paid for it. And this is kind of the type of game I was talking about a minute ago, where you pay up front for the game, but then you basically got everything in the game. There were no like in-game purchases. But I played a heck of a lot of the Infinity Blade trilogy. So that
Oh,
was
I've
really
heard
the
of
only
that.
mobile, because it was one of the first mobile games that looked like top notch, because it was actually running on your phone, because it was out I think before iPads even existed.
Oh,
And then I
wow.
got an iPad, and it played much bigger and much better when it was on a bigger screen than my phone. And it was newer than my phone, so it ran smoother as well. But it was one of the first ones that ran on Unreal Engine on a phone, and it looked amazing. And so I played. There were 3 of them. The one that I played the most was 2. But yeah, that's really the only mobile game I've ever like really, really, really been into. I played a couple right now, but I've not spent a penny on either one. Um, and
Oh, yeah.
even when it comes to not mobile games, I'm very frugal. I've mentioned a lot that I never. The last game I think I bought new, like on launch, was Destiny 1 in 2014. I don't think I've
Oh,
bought
wow.
a game on launch since. I basically wait for like a year or whatever, maybe longer, till I can get like the Game of the Year edition with all the DLC for like 50% off. I rarely buy anything that's less than 50% off. And when I do, I use my Microsoft Rewards points, because I'm an Xbox guy. So when I do buy it, I'm basically not spending anything out of pocket either. So
Fair.
I'm ridiculously frugal. So
That's
I
fair. I think
think the amount
fair.
across all games I've ever played, the amount of money I've spent on in-game purchases is probably around $10.
Oh, wow, that's definitely less than I have, although we're kindred spirits in that. I am also frugal. I have purchased a game recently that at full price on launch, but it's only one. Other than that, I'm in the same boat. I refuse to buy games new. I think they're too expensive. I don't agree with paying with those prices, so I will wait. I'm patient. But
especially
unfortunately,
when you're paying at the beginning to basically be the beta tester.
exactly. Oh, that's a good point too, especially with modern gaming. But that's unfortunate because it's going to be a long time before you play any Dark Souls games because even Dark Souls 1 is still full price on Steam.
I
Uh,
do have Dark Souls Remastered,
oh,
and I
very
have
good. Oh, yeah,
I've
they released that for 30, right?
I have no idea. I when so I didn't get it on launch. I probably got it about a year after the original Xbox One, and I had that for, let's see here. I think the Xbox One came out in 2014. I think I got it for like Christmas for 2015. And I had that for, let's see, about 3 years until the Xbox One X came out. I wasn't planning on upgrading to it, but just a few months after the Xbox One X came out, it was like 2 weeks before my birthday, and my Xbox One died. Like, um, I tried to get it repaired, and or I couldn't get it running. I still have it, but it doesn't work. It just died. I was playing it, and just like there was a pop sound, and it was out. So,
Oh, a pop sound. That might actually be repairable.
okay,
Pop sound's usually a capacitor popping.
that very well could be. I've still got it, so uh, if you wanted me to send it to you for you to repair it, if you know that kind of stuff, we could maybe work that out. But I went and looked at One X's, which had just come out a couple months ago, and they were $500.
Oh, wow.
Um,
Oh, so,
and
prior.
uh, yes, this was back in like 2018 when my Xbox One died.
Gotcha.
A couple months after the One X had come out, because I think it came out in like March or April, and my Xbox One died at the end, late in June.
Oh, what
And
perfect timing for Xbox.
yeah, because my birthday is at the beginning of July. So I was looking at getting a One X. I was like, $500. Yikes. So
Yeah.
a lot of times with technology, I'll go and look at, like Facebook Marketplace to get it like secondhand. Because as long as it's in good condition, I have no problem. It's got some physical scratches on it. I don't really care as long as it works.
Yep.
And I'm pretty sure I found it on Facebook Marketplace. I stumbled across somebody who was selling their One X with 2 controllers and like 20 games for $500. So I was like, sold. So I went like that day, and I went and picked it up, and because I got basically like probably $700-800 worth of stuff for $500, and it was basically brand new because it had just come out a few months ago. And whatever. Oh, Dark Souls Remastered was one of the games in that bundle. So I ended up with it without actually buying that game. So
Well, good.
that's how I ended up. So I've played the opening. I beat the Asylum Demon. That's about it. I'm going to go back to it at some point, but I don't know when because my backlog is ginormous.
Oh, yeah, and it's always good to have a game like that in your backlog, though, because you'll never know. One day, you'll get that urge to kick it open. It's definitely a difficult game. That was the game that I paid for recently.
Okay.
The first time I paid for something full price in a long time was Elden Ring,
Okay.
and I don't regret it because if you are a gamer like me who likes to get every little thing and goes to every little
I
nook
am a
and cranny,
completionist.
yeah, just to find everything you can do, you're gonna spend like 300 hours on your first playthrough.
Oh
It's
my
gonna be
goodness.
like a Skyrim length game, and so you're by the end of it, you're like, oh, I absolutely got my money's worth on this. But it's not without its problems. It's a giant game, so it comes with those gaps. But it's
I've
definitely the most popular one that's come out, and yeah,
Yeah, and given that the intro to Dark Souls Remastered is my only. I always get this word, the
foray.
foray. Thank you. I used that word once when Melee James and Kay were on, and they're like, "Is foray the word you're looking for?" I'm like, "Yes."
Yeah,
Uh,
foray.
but yeah, the beginning of Dark Souls Remastered is my only for, for foray into the Souls-like games. Um, But Elden Ring is a great entry for people who haven't really played any of the Souls-like games, right? Because it's a little bit more forgiving.
So
Maybe not forgiving, but
I'll say
you have
this.
more options at
It's that,
least.
yeah, it's sort of like that. It's so Elden Ring is, so it's the most popular by far in that it had like 20 plus million sales total, whereas Dark Souls didn't have quite as many sales. Dark Souls 3, the most recent one, didn't really have quite as many sales. The Sekiro was kind of popular, but they've been
I
ramping
am
up.
really looking forward to playing Sekiro.
Yeah, that's a fantastic game, by the way.
I've
But
heard it.
Elden Ring is a great game to start on and a great game to leave and never play the series again. So let me explain. It's I recently got all achievements that basically platinumed the game for Steam, and to get that achievement, or I should say, when I looked at the achievement, only 8.8% of the Steam owners had it, and there's something like 13 million Steam owners. So that's a very tiny little number of people that actually got that achievement. And I have to say, it's not as hard as it seems, but Elden Ring is one of those games where it's easy to get into and you'll be fine right up until you get about halfway through. And then they like crank it up to 11 because they know that the previous Souls games fans are going to want that difficulty. And so that's what they gave them. And unfortunately, if you look at the Steam achievements and the fact that only about 40% is the highest number of achievement on any given achievement they have,
Okay.
you can tell that about 60% of the people just checked out at some point, which is unfortunate, but it tells you what kind of game it is. Easy to get into, hard to finish.
Yeah, and it's like you said, it's massive. So uh, not everyone is a completionist.
Oh,
So
absolutely. And you know,
a
you
lot of
don't have
people.
to be. If you understood Dark Soul games from how they are in the past, you'd be like, okay, the reality is there's only so many bosses I actually need to beat. I don't need to kill all 130 plus bosses.
Oh, okay.
It's more like 16 or 17 bosses total that you have to kill. But you know, who
So
wants to have to read a guide to tell them what to do before they even play the game? You know, that's not
yeah, it
always
depends
fun.
on.
It
Yeah,
depends on
I
the
know.
individual.
Yeah, being a completionist, and I'll often look at that before I decide whether I'm going to play a game or not.
I'm the same way, but I've been told by a lot of people they just do not like having to do that, which I understand.
Yeah. One thing that if you're big into achievements, the one what a lot of us prefer to a walkthrough is actually more of a roadmap where, uh, because one of the most annoying things is missable achievements, where if you miss it, you can't go back. You have to start a new game to get and then get back to that point. So the best thing about roadmaps is just telling you like, here's the point to look out for this missable achievement, so you don't actually have to go and read the whole walkthrough of everything you need to
Yeah,
know
like the
about the
bullet
game before you
points.
get started. Yeah, it's basically like, here's the synopsis of, here's the stuff you want to make sure you pay attention to, but everything else you can't miss. So just go do that at your leisure. So not a lot of games have those, at least on the Xbox side of things, but any games that do have the roadmap, a lot of us are really appreciative of that, and I've written a few of them for some of the games that I've played in
As
the
have I, because there's been some games I've played where I'll go on Game Facts and I'll see no guides or anything, and I'm like, I've got to write something because there was some stuff I ran into that I have to tell other people that they're going to run into at the very least.
Yeah. Looking at the achievements on the Xbox side, the platinum achievement for Elden Ring is 18%. Got all the
Oh, that's
achievements.
awesome. That's way
So,
more.
yeah, I think, well, this is at least on true achievements. So that is only the number of players who are actually registered on the True Achievement website. And, people who are on here are definitely more likely to 100% a game than people who aren't.
So that's
So,
technically a lot smaller of a number than I think.
yeah, I'm trying. Oh, here we go. One of the things that was nice that they added a little while ago is you can click on the achievement and it'll show you the percentage, the completion percentage for any achievement for the True Achievements users versus everyone on Xbox. So yeah, the True Achievement users, it's actually it's 17.98, so just under 18%. But Xbox wide is 3.2%, so much smaller
Oh,
for those
wow.
people who are not the achievement hunters like us.
Now, I get that. That one's fair. The one that I'd be more interested in is just completing the game in the first place, which I think is just called the Elden Lord or something like that. And that one is for beating the game once. And you'll notice I said
Oh, Elden
once.
Lord. Yes. Oh, that's annoying. It when I'm looking at the list, it shows Elden Lord, achieve the Elden Lord ending, and then I click on it and then oh, it didn't load yet because I was like, and then it's a secret achievement, so it opens up and says secret achievement doesn't tell you what you need to do. I just didn't let it load long enough. So at least on Xbox, on the true achievement side, there's 31.7% that completed it, and on Xbox wide is 12.13%.
I wonder if that's the one for the ending or just for beating the game once. I can't remember which one it was, but the one that
It does have
requires
the
you.
little checkered flag, which indicates on true achievements for the achievement for completing the story.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. Well, there are 6 endings, so there might be 6 of those.
Oh, okay.
So
Gotcha.
this is the thing. I understand why the other one is so low at 3%. Is simply because you have to beat the game 3 times in a row minimum to get that achievement.
Oh, really?
Because you have to get 3 endings, and one is a regular one, and by regular I mean it's one of 4 potential endings you get playing normally, and then the other 2 are special ones that you have to do a special quest for.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, the completion time is for getting all the achievements at least is 80 to 100 hours. But if you were going to do everything in the game, like you said, it's probably going to take a lot longer than that.
I mean, yeah, it also depends on the person because that the game can go as fast or as slow as you want it to. So if you're one of those guys like me who likes to crouch down and use a bow and just headshot everything from a days away, you're gonna play forever. It's gonna take you forever.
That sounds like everyone's favorite Skyrim build.
Sneaking and bowing, yeah. I remember the meme videos when Skyrim came out from all the. You remember how there used to be a lot of cartoon animators on YouTube?
Yeah.
And the Skyrim memes were fantastic. And that's another game that takes you like 300 hours if you go through the entire, like every little thing. I mean, maybe
Yeah.
not all the achievements, but everything that you can find.
Yeah, exactly. The achievements is probably I think it was like 60 to 80. But yeah, if you were to go and do everything in the game, I don't know if it's true. Okay, it says 98 to 123 hours, but yeah, still pretty long. Oh, you know what? 60 to 80, I think, was before the DLC came out.
Oh yeah, because it did have a couple DLC.
Yeah.
And you know what? That's
Oh,
crazy about Elden Ring is that it's 90 hours and the DLC hasn't been released yet.
yeah. What I was just gonna say a second ago is that I don't know if it's true, but I've heard that you can't ever actually complete Skyrim because it does have procedurally generated quests, so you'll never actually run out of things to do. I don't know if that's
Yeah,
true,
the
but I've heard
tavern
that.
quests are like that. They basically get recycled, but they are the dungeons or I rather the caves they send you to are regenerative, so
Okay.
they will just auto generate something new each time.
Okay. I figured there was at least some semblance of truth to that when I heard that. I'm like, I would not bet against that.
Oh yeah, Bethesda is famous for playing with tech like that.
Yeah, the I remember the first time I didn't know that this was technically a bug, but I'm sure you've heard about the Skyrim space program. At
Yeah,
least that's what it was dubbed.
the trolls.
The
Yeah,
not the trolls, the
or the
giants.
mammoths. Yeah, yeah, the mammoths and the giants, or the giants by the mammoths, rather.
Yes, exactly. Because I remember the first time I got hit by one and just like I went almost into space. I was laughing my head off. I thought it was so funny. I just thought that was part of the game because of how hard they hit you. I didn't find out later till I watched a video that talked about it that was actually a glitch in the game, and they just thought it was so funny they just left it in. They never bothered patching it.
So you know the first dragon you fight? in Skyrim?
Um,
Or
not Alduin, but like
no, no,
the first one that
yeah,
is part of the quest that you take down.
yeah, you have to kill him.
Yeah.
He picked me up and dropped me from like a super high height, and I didn't realize that it was a glitch, that I accidentally got stuck on his model, and he
Oh,
lifted me up and dropped me. I thought it was just part of the game. I was
thought
like,
it was
that's
like
so
scripted.
cool. They can just instant kill you like that.
They can. Because I do know they can do execution animations on
Well,
you
it's
and
typically when
kill
you're
you.
at low health, though. It's not like when you're at full health, I think.
Yeah, if you're low on health, they can do it. Or I have had it happen when I was at full health, but it was because it was so early in the game that my full health still was not a
Oh
whole lot
yeah,
of
yeah,
health.
that counts
It's
too.
less than the amount of damage that they need to do in order to pull off that move. So I had full health, but then he just executed me anyways. I was like, that's
Yeah.
not fair. But it's like, it's a dragon. What chance would you really have against it?
And then you start kicking their butts, right? And then you fight a walrus and it whips your butt.
Yeah, freaking horkers.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny how like the lower level dragons can be, easier than, some of the higher level basic enemies like that. It's like that doesn't make sense. But yeah,
Well,
such as
if you turn the
RPGs.
difficulty up, yeah, it's definitely that an RPG thing. But if you crank the enemy difficulty up, not only did it turn them into like damage sponges, they just they just sneeze at you and you'd be done for.
um
But it was fun. It was a fun game. I'll give it that.
yeah, I played a heck of a lot of it on 360. I've started the anniversary edition. I played probably, I don't know, like 4 or 5 hours of it, so not very much. But I'm looking forward to playing through that again because it's been came out in 2011. I played it probably pretty regularly up through like 2015, so it's probably been 6 or 7 years ish since I played it. So I'm looking forward to playing through it again at some point. As um,
Oh yeah, I'm like that with Fallout New Vegas. I like to replay that every couple of years.
Yeah, that one gets mentioned a lot because a lot of people consider that the best Fallout game, or at least of uh, the rebooted Fallout, which started with Fallout 3. Because I've never played any of the older ones that were isometric. But
Yeah, the CRPGs,
yeah,
they were pretty good
I've heard
though.
that
They
they
were
they
pretty
were
good.
good, but I never played any of those because I was never into RPGs until Oblivion. Because to me, until I played Oblivion, RPGs were all 100,000 hour long turn based combat JRPGs, which I hate. So when I found out, wait, there are RPGs that are real time combat. Okay, I'm interested now. And Oblivion was my first. I'm like, I love this.
Well, I'll say this. I'm a fan of both myself. I love turn-based RPGs, tactics RPGs. Final Fantasy Tactics, it's not quite the same as the normal JRPG. It's the grid-based thing where you have a bunch of units and it's more like a game of chess than it is a turn-based RPG. It's like a mix of both.
Yeah, I've
But
heard good things about Final Fantasy Tactics. Never played it, but I've heard good things from people who like Final Fantasy.
yeah, if you're into that stuff, it's a great game. If you're not, it's mind bending, and I totally get it. Because sometimes this is why I like both. Because sometimes when you're young like that and you have all that excess time to play games, you get bored of some of them because you've played them too much. So when I got to play Morrowind for the first time, it's very much the same thing. Like, oh my god, RPGs can be like this. Like, I had no idea. I was so blown away by it.
Yeah,
And then Oblivion came out, and Oblivion is just the best game ever for me.
nice. Is it
I think I've spent like easily 1,000 hours in that game.
nice? Would you say Oblivion's like your favorite game of all time?
It's probably my favorite action RPG of all time, or first person RPG, if you want to call it that. There really isn't any game that does it like Oblivion, that does that genre or that style that they have quite as good as Oblivion does.
Yeah,
There's a lot of games to try, but its story is amazing. There's a lot of fun stuff, and I guess that's really what I'd like. How I'd sum it up is it's just really fun to play. There's not a lot of RPGs. They're typically more drab and slow. And if you like reading really thick books, then you might like reading, all the book long RPGs of the past,
Oh yeah, yeah.
which I'm a fan of, which is fine. I think I think that's what's great about Oblivion, though, and Skyrim, and pretty much all their games like that, is they also have like books and deep lore that you can really just get sucked into and not do anything all day with your character.
Yeah.
You're standing in one place, but have learning all this crap. So if you're really into that stuff, I mean, it has a both. Has both of them for both needs.
So what's your take on if it ever actually happens, Sky Oblivion?
I think it's going to be awesome.
Because
I think
makes
Skyrim, it's pretty still even to this day, and it would be nice to see Oblivion look like that.
Yeah, because just to make sure I have it right, Sky Oblivion, the concept is basically rebuilding Oblivion in the Skyrim engine, essentially, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
and it's paired along with another. I mean, they're not the same thing, but they're related. Is a Morrowind version as well, a version of Morrowind in the Skyrim engine.
Okay. You were breaking up again there. What was that one called?
I'm not sure what the Morrowind one is called. I just know it's being remade in the Skyrim engine.
Okay. Yeah, you're breaking up really bad right now. So,
Oh, I'm sorry, man.
it sounded like you were saying that you're not sure what it's called, but you just know that someone's working on doing the same thing for Morrowind as they're doing for Oblivion. Is that right?
Yeah, that's basically what's happening.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I never did Morrowind, just because I didn't know about Elder Scrolls until Oblivion. But I've heard good things about Morrowind. Well, I could say the game Morrowind. They did have a DLC in Skyrim where you go back to Morrowind.
Oh, and that was a fun DLC too.
Yeah, it was the very last one, I believe. I'm trying to remember. It wasn't called Morrowind, was it? Nah, it got me thinking. It was. Now I need to check because it's gonna bug me. All right, DLC Dragonborn. That's what it was called.
Yeah.
Now, when you went back to Morrowind and you learned some of these new, there were these new books that you could learn some new passive abilities, which made your character even more powerful. It's like, oh, these are dope. So, go ahead.
Oh, well, I was just gonna say Oblivion really did have that power fantasy whole thing locked down.
Yeah, you could get actually some crazy characters, just because there definitely was a lot more. I don't want to say customizability, but like with crafting and potions and stuff like that, you could do a lot more in Oblivion than you could in Skyrim. Skyrim was a lot more restrained on what you could do with those abilities.
Oh yeah, alchemy was definitely a lot more verbose in Oblivion.
Yes. So I've seen people do some crazy nuts things with those. It's like they basically like break the game.
Oh yeah, you can. Well, Skyrim has that too with smithing, but it's interesting because you basically mix alchemy and smithing, and you can have like millions of HP.
Because I was talking with someone about that on one of my streams as well, and I think maybe at least on the Xbox version they patched that out, because I remember doing that when I heard about it, and it did make me more powerful, but it wasn't like crazy, like off the scales where I could turn like a fork into the most powerful weapon in the game. It might
Yeah,
be
they
on the
definitely
PC
patched
version.
it out in the later versions, like
Okay.
Anniversary, I think.
That definitely makes sense, because but I think that they did on the 360 version of Skyrim as well, because I've barely played any of the Anniversary version. But I remember hearing about that, and I went and tried it, and I'm like, okay, this isn't. I mean, I'm a little bit better, but I'm not as powerful as the person in the video that I saw. I
Oh
think it's
yeah,
more of the
if you
PC
watch,
version.
Yeah, the PC version is typically broken. Plus, you have the console that you can access.
Yeah, the
So
mods
you
and
have
stuff too.
the developer console, so you can cheat anything you want.
So your Oblivion time was that basically mostly spent on the PC version? Assuming there was a PC version,
Yeah. Most of my time is in the PC. I bought it back when I don't even think Steam existed.
because I thought Oblivion was a Xbox exclusive, or maybe I'm getting that mixed up. So, um, um, because yeah, maybe I'm getting that mixed up with something. Or maybe it was a timed exclusive because I know there have been plenty of games that were like timed exclusive on whatever console
Yeah,
and then
yeah, I
came out
think you're right.
later.
I think it was exclusive for like a year or two.
That's probably what it was. Okay. Because the reason I was asking what you played it on, because one of the things that I often talk about when talking about Oblivion is, or no, now I meant to say Skyrim because what I'm thinking of in my head was in Skyrim. Um,
I think in both cases they were exclusive for a short period of time.
that would make a lot of sense. Um, but it sounds like you spent more time in Oblivion than Skyrim, but it sounds like you probably spent a good amount of time in Skyrim as well. Is that right?
Yeah, like at least 300
Okay, so
hours.
yeah, you put a lot of time in as well. Okay, and you played Skyrim on PC as well.
I played it on PC and Xbox.
Okay, so what I was going with a moment ago is unique to the 360 version because they this is well after the game had been out, but it was at the peak of the Xbox Connect where they were basically patching Connect functionality into tons of games. And when they patched the Connect into Skyrim, that is the best Connect game like they ever had. Did you ever play Skyrim with the Connect?
No, but that actually sounds interesting. I know it was the motion control, right?
So that was the main idea behind the Connect is that it tracks your body. It didn't actually use anything with the camera when they patched it into Skyrim. They patched it in specifically for the microphones so you could use voice commands in the game, which was a game changer.
Oh.
The one thing that annoyed me though is like, why do you need a Connect to do this? Why can't I just wear my Xbox headset and do it? Why do I need a Connect?
Oh, that's right. They
Um,
did come with headsets, didn't they?
yeah. So it's like all you need is a microphone. Why does it have to be a Connect? But I never found out the answer to that. But they patched in uh, tons of voice commands into Skyrim, and it was amazing because you could basically set up like hot swap, like basically like hotkeys you would do on the PC version, but with voice commands. So you could basically, for the most part, you could play through the game essentially without ever even pulling up your menu to change items and stuff. You could do it all through voice commands. It was awesome. The best thing about it was the dragon shouts. You wouldn't have to go and equip the dragon shout and hit a button. You just hold the right bumper, and then if you memorize the words to the dragon shouts, you just say the dragon shout, and he'll just do whatever one you said without having to go through your menu to select it. It
Oh,
was
that's awesome.
amazing.
That is
So
awesome.
yeah, and you could be like, equip right hand sword, equip left hand, spell or whatever, equip armor set 2. You could swap through all this stuff without ever pausing the game. It was
Oh
amazing.
man, that sounds like that would be great for people with disabilities too.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that, but yes, that would have been great. I remember I printed out like 3 pages. Because the reason why I found out about it was I think because of the official Xbox magazine at the time. They mentioned it in an article, so I went and looked it up. And you could go to like Skyrim's website or whatever, and there was a page of just the Connect commands, and so I printed those out and I learned a bunch of them because you can also use them to like command your party members and stuff too, and like, hey, take this item from me, because of encumbrance. It was amazing. And despite when the Xbox One launched, they all came bundled in with this, the second gen of the Connect. The Xbox One version of Skyrim does not have Connect commands in it. The only way you can do that is by playing on the 360 version with the 360 Connect,
Oh
which
wow.
makes no sense.
Yeah.
But
It figures that
so
they're not backwards compatible. A lot of companies weren't keen on that.
yeah, no, there were a ton of games around that time that were not backwards compatible, despite being hugely popular because they came out with an Xbox One version. They wanted you to buy the game again. That is
Uh,
one thing that I will give credit to. I don't know whose choice it was, but at least someone in Ubisoft, because every single Assassin's Creed game that has a Xbox One version, the 360 version is also backwards compatible.
are you a big fan of Assassin's Creed?
Yeah, not like I wouldn't say it's like up there in my favorite franchises ever, but I do like it a lot. I've played my game I'm currently playing, not like at this second, but I'm currently playing through right now, is Assassin's Creed Syndicate. I played
Oh, that's pretty
everything
good.
from the beginning up to Syndicate. So
So you did play the three Assassin's Creed 2 games. That's weird to say.
yeah, I played uh 2 Brotherhood and Revelations back when they first came out.
Yeah,
And then that
same.
was basically the end of my Assassin's Creed, uh, playing for,
Same.
like, a decade until, like, 2020. I went,
Oh wow.
I w I went back, because I have to look, but I'm pretty sure Revelations came out around 2010. Um,
Yeah, that's correct.
so, I didn't play any Assassin's Creed until 2020, where, I had acquired every single Assassin's Creed game through one means or another. I never actually, like, bought them, but, like, got them for, like, games with gold or whatever. Um, and, so I was like, "Alright, I'm gonna kinda catch up." My plan was to get all the way caught up. I didn't get that far, but I basically spent all of 2020 playing almost nothing but Assassin's Creed games, starting with the Ezio collection because it had been basically 10 years since I had played them. So I played
And
through that.
it's great, so why not?
Yeah, and it's great. And I played 3, uh, Liberation, 4, Rogue, um, what was it? Oh, and Unity. So I played a
And now
lot of
you're
Assassin's
on
Creed that
Syndicate.
year. And I played I actually got the very last achievement in Unity earlier this year. But that's only because when I was playing Unity a couple years ago, uh, there's only 2 multiplayer achievements in Unity that you have to have another player for. Um, and I always leave those for last. Literally, like the week before I finished getting all the achievements except for those 2, those last 2 achievements became discontinued because the Unity servers went down without warning.
Oh
And
no.
then I was pissed and I had written it off. I'm like, all right, well, I'm never getting the completion in this game. And then like a couple of years later or whatever, all of a sudden it's like, hey, it's back. So I went on like that day and I got those last 2 achievements because they were very quick. It only takes like 20 minutes to get both of them. You just need another person to do it with. So I went and got it, and I finally got the Unity completion earlier this year, I think it was.
Oh, that's
And
awesome.
I started playing. I took a break basically from whenever basically finished Unity a while back until July. I started playing through Syndicate, but I've been keep getting distracted by other games. So I play a little bit of Syndicate, then get distracted by another game, come back, play a little bit of Syndicate. And then after about the mid of this month, I was like, all right, I'm focusing on Syndicate, not getting distracted by anything else. I was trying to finish it before the end of the month due to a contest that I'm taking part in, but I'm not going to finish it because I have, you know, basically 2 days left and I still have way more to do in it. And Syndicate is pissing me off because there's about 6 or 7 achievements that are glitched where I've done more than what I need to unlock the achievements, but the achievements just won't unlock. So
Oh
that's
no,
driving
that's
me
no
nuts
good.
as well.
Yeah, that would drive me crazy. I think the last one I played was Origin, the
Okay,
one that takes place in Egypt.
I'm looking forward to getting into the rebooted franchise, specifically Origin and Odyssey. I'm not as much looking forward to playing Valhalla, but I do have all of them. But I'm looking forward to playing them at some
Yeah, I
point. I just
haven't
don't know when I'm going to get
tried
to it.
Odyssey or Valhalla. The Odyssey does look awesome though. I mean, just the setting looks awesome. But
Yeah.
Origin was interesting. It had a pretty good story to it.
I've heard
Um,
it's really good from like pretty much everyone who's pretty big into the Assassin's Creed franchise.
one of the best main characters since Ezio, I would
Okay,
say. And for
interesting.
me, I have to ask you, as a fan of the Assassin Creed 2 trilogy, which one was your favorite out of the three?
Probably, probably Brotherhood. I like all three of them because
Oh
I
yeah,
like
absolutely.
Ezio. He's a great character. I like some of the like quality of life improvements and stuff they added to Brotherhood. Uh, although there are even some more they added in Revelation, like the hook blade. I think was Revelation, right?
Oh yeah, and that's legitimately one of the cooler additions.
Yeah, I do like the hook blade a lot. Probably one of the things that kind of bumped Revelations down a little bit was the tower defense mini game. I wasn't a huge fan of that.
Yeah, that was a little obnoxious. I will agree with that. I liked the story. I really, I think the third one, Revelations, is probably my favorite, simply because you finally get to see Altair again, and he's
Yeah,
old, and
that's
yet he
true.
still stomps.
What was that part?
Oh, I'm sorry, he's older, but he still stomps.
Oh, he still stomps. Yeah, yeah. It's a great trilogy of games, and then one that I often talk about because it was basically overshadowed, and I don't think it got really the recognition it deserves. And it was probably one of my favorite of the entire franchise. Was Rogue. I really liked Rogue.
That is the one where he swaps sides, right?
Yeah, you play basically. You start out as an assassin, but you kind of like you know come to the realization that assassins aren't as good as they say. Basically as the reputation has made them out to be, and you switch sides of the Templars and fight them because um, it does seem like they aren't doing things for the good of the people like they say they are. They're doing it because they want power.
Yeah, and I like the story. It's sort of like the assassins can also be corrupt.
Yeah,
And it does. There aren't not all Templars are necessarily bad guys who want to destroy everything or rule over everything. Sometimes they're genuine, like paladins of the people.
yeah, yeah. It was Rogue was basically overshadowed because it came out like right after Unity, and Unity's launch was a huge debacle. So that kind of like overshadowed Rogue. And Rogue was a 360 game. It didn't release on the new consoles, whereas Unity was the first one on Xbox One. And so yeah, it just kind of dominated the news. But Rogue was one of my favorites, so I
One of
liked Rogue a
mine
lot.
was definitely four because pirates and
Yeah.
ships, and I'm crazy about pirates and ships. So I mean, come on, my name is FatBeard. It's definitely a reference to a captain. You know what I mean?
Okay. Yeah, I did like 4 a lot as well. I played because, like I said earlier, all the ones that came out on both consoles had a backwards compatible stack. So, like
Thankfully, yeah.
Rogue and Rogue Remastered, I played both of them. 4 Black Flag, I played both the 360 and the Xbox One version. Same with Assassin's Creed 3 with the remaster and the original and
Three
Liberation.
wasn't
So
bad. I play.
I liked,
Unfortunately, I
yeah, I
love the
liked it better
story.
than I expected.
The story was great. It was. I think I was blown away by it at some points, but I think it was my problem was on launch or well within that first month. I had like a glitch where the main bad guy of the game like teleported to me, and I just killed him. And it was before I got to the end of the game. It just randomly happened. I went, "What?
That's
What?"
weird.
Yeah, I had to replay it again a couple years later just to figure out what actually happens.
Yeah, because I went into 3 with the expectation of not because I'd heard that it wasn't very good from basically everyone. So I went in not expecting a lot out of it, and I liked it better than I expected. Still
Yeah.
not as much as like 4 or Rogue, but I liked it more than I expected I was going to.
And Connor was a cool character. I liked his teacher. He was a cool guy. And it's sort of the reverse of Rogue in that you start out as a Templar and then become an assassin.
Yeah, that was a great plot twist where, blew everyone's mind. It's like, "Oh my god! I thought I was an assassin this whole time." It's like, "Oh, nope, you're a Templar." It's like, "What?"
And you know what's cool finding out that that's Kenway, that's the grandson of your character in 4.
Yeah, that also confused me because 4 actually takes place earlier in the timeline than 3 does.
Yeah, like 100 years or something beforehand, I think.
I don't think it was quite 100
Oh yeah,
years.
maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's oh yeah, 1700s. I think 4 takes place in the 1600s, so it's probably like 60 years maybe.
Yeah, I think it's probably about 60 years because, yeah, Edward, Kenway is Connor's grandfather, so it couldn't have been too terribly spread out.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, when I first played it, I was like, I'm so confused. What? This makes no sense. And then my buddy who had played all the Assassin's Creed, who was keeping up on the franchise, explained to me. He's like, no. 4 takes place before 3 in the timeline. I'm like, okay, I get it now, but that's very confusing.
The only thing I didn't like about those games were the Abstergo parts, not the story, just the gameplay, because it was just kind of droning on and boring. It's like, I want to kill people. Come on.
Yeah, it's like, why are you forcing us out of the Animus? And all the interesting stuff is in the Animus, and at this time, um, but what the heck with the main character that you're playing as, in real life, through the first, up to Assassin's Creed 3, Desmond.
Husband. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, Desmond. He was. What did I hear that he was supposed to? They're supposed to keep him alive, but they ended up deciding to kill him off, and then it's like they really shouldn't have done that because then they didn't know where they were going with the real, the modern day storyline. Ever since, I've only played up to Syndicate, so I don't really know what's going on in the modern day timeline since then. But it
They
definitely
go
seems like they
back.
didn't know what to do after they killed Desmond off.
I will give you some good news. They go back to a more personal story of a different character, and you're like,
Okay.
okay, this is cool again. I'll say this: part of the problem with Desmond and the third game and killing him off was that in the second of the in Brotherhood, basically, they have to kill off Lucy. And the
Yeah.
reason they have to kill her off is because there was a huge disagreement of some sort between the voice actress and the writers because she was assisting
Oh,
in the writing. And
okay.
it was so big that she got angry and left, and they had to write her out. She did agree to come back and finish her lines for the game and, a little bit for the third of the trilogy plus 3 because, she has some flashback stuff.
Yeah.
But I guess everybody kind of lost heart after that, and they ended out just not wanting to continue the story, which is unfortunate.
Okay.
But that's why it sort of ended that way for Desmond.
Okay, so I think I had heard something about that before, but so it's basically the reason why they killed Lucy off in the game is because of,
A fallout, unfortunately.
you know behind the scenes stuff with the studio and the voice actors and stuff. Okay, although I don't, I don't think it'd be too difficult to find someone who has a similar enough voice to take take her character on and make it sound close enough to her. I would think.
Well, a lot of voice actors have a cannot replace clause in their contracts where if you kill
Oh,
off the character, you're not allowed to replace them, or if they're fired, you're not allowed to continue the character. Like you're
I've
forced
never
into
heard of
killing
that
them off.
before,
Yeah,
but
it's
that makes
it's
sense.
yeah, it's sort of like it makes it to where it's mutually beneficial just not to separate for any reason,
Yeah,
business wise. But stuff happens. I can't really be mad at anybody. I can't take sides on or anybody's side on that. I can only say it's just unfortunate that it happened. It was
yeah.
a great series either way. It was a little weak what happened with Desmond, but they gave you a great ending with Connor and with Ezio and with Altair.
Yeah, and I didn't know it really going into it, but it was kind of cool as I was playing through 3 and 4 and Liberation and Unity that all of those are all connected because they all take place in roughly the same time frame. So characters will meet and overlap with other characters. So I
Oh
thought that
yeah,
was really cool.
and it's awesome because you're not expecting it when it happens. It's like, oh, this is awesome.
Yeah,
And you
like
know, they're
the
not. There's a lot of critics of Unity and Syndicate and stuff, but I think people's main problems were shoddy launches, not the actual stories or the game. You know,
yeah.
because you
Yeah,
play Syndicate, and the climbing mechanics are like the best they've ever been.
yeah, the addition of the grappling hook essentially was like a game changer for climbing
You're
and
gonna
getting across buildings and stuff.
you're gonna see that exact same concept in Sekiro, and you're gonna love it.
Awesome. Um, yeah, when I got the grappling hook, I'm like, "Oh my god, this is fantastic." And I was like, "You know what? This is," and given that it takes place, in Victorian England, I was like, "This is basically the closest thing we're ever gonna get to a Gotham by Gaslight game."
Oh man, that would have been cool as hell.
Yeah, because it's basically, it's got very similar combat to, Arkham. You now have a grappling hook. It takes place in Victorian England. You can basically throw smoke bombs and then disappear up into the top of buildings. It's like you're Batman.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. You're definitely right. I see it
So
now.
I was like, it'd be cool if they could have like, not that they would have had the rights to it because it was, a WB thing. But that would have been cool if they could have like come to some sort of agreement to work on it together to make a Gotham by Gaslight game. And what's up, Vanquish? Showing up here to say hi. Thanks for dropping in and joining our discussion. We've just been talking about
Hello,
Assassin's Creed for
Vanquish.
like the last half hour.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a great series, and it's one of those things that it's another one of those game series that are in the zeitgeist. It's definitely not one of my favorite games ever, but it holds a big place in my heart just because most of them have been really good.
Yeah,
You know?
I've it's been nice that because they were putting out an Assassin's Creed game like every year, so they were kind of like bloating the genre, or not really the genre, but the franchise essentially. Kind of the same thing with like Call of Duty, and then they like slowed it down to like every other year. It's like nice little bit take a step back and be able to like breathe and enjoy the game for a little longer, especially if you're coming from many games behind in the franchise. It's been nice that I think Valhalla came out, is it 2 or 3 years ago now? It's been a while.
And didn't something recently come out that was Assassin's Creed related?
No, Mirage is about to come out next month
Ah, that's
in
what it was.
October, and that one's a much smaller one. It's not this giant RPG like the last three, Origins, Odyssey, and Valhalla. It's going back to more of like the first Assassin's Creed, so it's going
Oh,
to be a
that
lot more
sounds good.
contained, basically more back to basics. Because a lot of people are like, I like Assassin's Creed, and I like that they basically rebooted the franchise, and now it's basically an RPG. But people are like, what about the old Assassin's Creed? And so Mirage is much more like the old Assassin's Creeds, but they are still working on there's a bunch of Assassin's Creed projects that are in the works right now, which is what I was just going to ask you about, because I know one is Jade and one is Red. Like those, I don't know if so as far as we know, those are the code names, like Assassin's Creed Red and the Assassin's Creed Jade. I don't know if that's going to stay that or whether they're going to change it to like an actual name. But I'm very much looking forward to hearing more about Assassin's Creed Red, because it's finally, like a decade after people are asking for it, they're finally doing a Assassin's Creed Feudal Japan.
And I'm
Probably,
assuming that Jade is going to be China
uh, yes, I'm pretty sure
or
Jade
India.
is some sort of China related one, and
Yeah.
Red
I
is
guess
Japan
India would
related.
be Emerald, I should say, because that's where most Emerald comes from.
Okay, I did not know that. But yeah, I think because people have been asking for like feudal Japan Assassin's Creed like forever. I think
And I
after
think
this,
the reason they didn't want to do it is they were afraid of like some kind of tropiness with ninjas. But it's like, no, you guys gotta understand, it's too perfect not to do.
yeah, and I think after the success that they saw that Ghost of Tsushima got, they're like, okay, maybe we'll finally do it. So, given that I'm an Xbox guy, I haven't played Ghost of Tsushima because it's PlayStation only. I want to play
Same.
it at some point. Um,
It
but
looks
this,
it looks nice.
I've heard nothing but good things about it, and I definitely want to play it at some point. But this will probably be unless I finally get a PlayStation, or I think Ghost of Tsushima, because a lot of PlayStation exclusives have come to PC. I don't have a powerful enough PC to play it at the moment. That'll change at some point. But I don't believe Ghost of Tsushima has a PC port yet. So if I want to play it, I'll have to get a PlayStation for it.
I was in the same
Until
boat
then,
when it came to Bloodborne. I had no choice but to get a
oh,
PS4. I was like,
okay,
damn
yeah.
it. But because I found out that on the more powerful one, Bloodborne still ran at 30 FPS, I was like, oh, well, then I'll just get the cheaper one.
So, yeah, and until I get a PC that can play it, and or Ghost of Tsushima gets a PC port, the Assassin's Creed Red, whenever that comes out, will probably be the closest thing I'll get to Tsushima. And Vanquish is saying that Origins was amazing, Odyssey was meh, and Valhalla I couldn't get into. I totally get that. And he did play Ghost of Tsushima, was amazing. I would play it again I would pay again to get it on PC. Yeah,
Yeah, I would happily pay for that game to play it because it looks like one of the. I mean, I love feudal Japan. How could you not?
yeah. Yeah, just Google it right now. Is Ghost of Tsushima coming to PC? And there doesn't look like there's an answer to it. So yeah, it is still a PlayStation exclusive. So
I will say one thing as a PC player for the most part, I really like Xbox Live or Game Pass rather.
I was gonna say, I'm assuming you probably meant Game Pass more specifically, because yeah, it's the greatest deal in gaming.
It it's a crazy good deal, and if you have a fast enough internet connection, you can do the thing where you can
The
play
cloud
any.
streaming.
Yeah, you can play any console game you want streaming. I played Fable 2 and 3 that way.
Yeah, not all games have the streaming option, but they've been adding more and more, and there are a ton of games that have the streaming. It's especially nice on games that are like 150 gigs, so you don't have to take up so much space on your hard drive.
That's a good point. Steam. Oh my god. There's too many games that are like 100 gigabytes.
Yeah, like I haven't played them yet, but I will at some point. The most recent Modern Warfare 2 is like 150 gigs on my Xbox, and Jedi Survivor is like 140.
Oh
So they're
wow.
just huge games.
And how big is a typical hard drive for an Xbox?
The at least on the Series X comes with a 1 terabyte, which is more like 800 ish gigs usable. I did get a 1 terabyte expansion card, so I have close to 2 terabytes. And the expansion card is basically the same architecture as the internal SSD. So whereas if you plug an external hard drive in, like through the USB 3 port, you can store stuff on that. But if it's like a Series X enhanced game, you can't actually play it off that hard drive because it's not fast enough. You have to have the expansion card or have it be installed on the internal. But games that are not Series X or S enhanced, you can play those off of an external hard drive.
Oh wow, that's pretty good actually. That's a good deal.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, I don't think you can do that with the PlayStation at all.
yeah, I think the PlayStation, you can also do an
I
external
mean,
hard drive,
yeah, you can
but
do, but
depending on the game, you may or may not be able to play it off the hard drive. You may have to transfer it to the internal first. I'm not sure, as I don't have one, but I believe that's somewhat accurate.
well, the thing is, you could use like USB expansion and stuff like that, and that did work, but it usually only worked for my saves.
Oh, not the actual game, like the
Which is
install.
interesting because saves, they're not typically all that
Yeah, the
big.
file size is very small. They're usually like in kilobytes. Unless it's
But
Skyrim, those save files can get pretty large because it has to remember like everything about everything where it exists in the state of the world at the time.
which makes you wonder how big Skyrim saves are on the Xbox. They must be massive. They must be massive on the PC too.
I'd have to go back and look because on one of my like my most recent saves on my 360 version, because yeah, that was probably a good couple hundred hours. Um, yeah, I'm curious. I'll have to go back and look.
Yeah, a lot of people talk about the coding in a lot of Bethesda games being a giant spider, mess of a spider web of things that have to interact and talk to each other at all times. Like when you
Yeah,
fire a bullet, it has to load your inventory to make sure it pulls that one bullet out, and then corrects the numbers both in combat and in inventory at the same time.
speaking of Bethesda, because they were the publishers for it may be more than this, but I know for a fact that they were the publishers for the Doom reboot, Doom 2016. I don't know if they were the publishers of the older Doom games.
No, that was I think id Software published their own stuff for quite a while.
Okay, because yeah, I know they were the developers. I wasn't sure if they published the older ones, but I know Bethesda did with the Doom reboot, and uh, along with the file size thing, they added a ton of free. Well, it was paid DLC at first for Doom 2016, but after a number of years, it all went free. And that was another game that I got when I got my 1X with 20 some games. Doom 2016 was one of them, and it was I after all the DLC had gone free, but it had bloated, basically doubled the file size, because it was about 60 gigs initially, but with all these expansions and free DLCs, or all the DLCs they added, it bumped it up to almost 120 gigabytes.
Oh wow.
What they did is they basically um like optimized it somehow. They did voodoo technological coding magic, and they basically redid the entire game file and compacted it or compressed or something with the base game and all that additional DLC into about 60 gigs, which was really awesome. Although it was the one annoying thing is that basically there's at that point there's nothing you're getting off the disk. You're just putting in the disk as basically a DRM check, and it's downloading the entirety of the game off the internet. But the fact that you're basically cutting the file size in half from what it had grown to was awesome. It's like more developers who add tons to their game, like Call of Duty, they need to learn how to do that and file optimize with how large these games file sizes are getting. It's just ridiculous especially with the more budget ones where they have smaller hard drives. You fit like 2 or 3 games on them.
Oh yeah, definitely. Baldur's Gate 3 that recently came out?
Yeah, Mark has talked about it a lot because he hasn't been able to say enough good stuff about it. I haven't played it myself, but I've heard nothing but good things about it.
It is, let me look here. It's 132 gigabytes. Now the thing is, when Divinity 2 came out, or Divinity Original Sin 2 came out, which is Larian's previous game.
Okay, I didn't know that they did that. I've heard lots of good things about that game.
Oh yeah, it's a great game, but it was like 92 gigabytes at one time. Now, if I look at it, I think it's about 20 gigs. So
So they did something similar.
yeah, and it's really, really like, it's funny because they made a post about it, and it basically said, "Hey, we removed all the redundancy." They were just blatantly honest about what they were doing, and it's the reality of when they code games, they get messy like that, and it takes time to reduce that bulk. But I appreciate it when any company goes in after the fact and still reduces it, because they don't have to do that, but it's nice
Yeah.
when they do.
Yeah, I had never even heard of Larian until, this Baldur's Gate 3 stuff started ramping up, earlier this year. And now it's like, I've never played any of their games, but I definitely have a very good impression of them as a developer, and as a company. I'm like I said, I'm not big on turn-based combat, so I'm not terribly interested in playing Baldur's Gate 3. But
Oh yeah,
if they
that's
made more of a real-time combat, or not even an RPG, just any genre that I'm interested in, I'd definitely be interested in checking it out, because they definitely have a good reputation to me now.
so. Here's the thing: back in the past, they were what was known as like a AA developer. There was another Divinity 2, Divinity 2 Ego Draconis. which
I've
was
not heard of that one.
it is a wow, it's very old, and it's a third person action RPG. And maybe if you had found it back then, I don't know, you might like it now if you can find an appreciation for an old janky third person RPG. But it was one of their earlier games, and it was amazing to me when I was a kid because I found it and I was like, this game is terrible, but it's so fun and full of action, and you fly on a dragon. Well, rather you turn into a dragon. You can just go, you're walking around as a dude, and then you jump, and then you turn into a dragon. So you start flying around and fighting stuff as a dragon. It was
That
amazing
sounds
back then, And so it's one of those things where it's interesting that you say that because they actually started with the third person RPG and worked their way into the turn based RPG.
okay. What the one that you're talking about, was that a PC only or was that on consoles?
Oh, it's got to be on consoles. Let me check here.
Okay, yeah, I've heard of Divinity Original Sin 2, but I've never heard of that one, so I wasn't sure if it had ever been on Xbox. Divinity, yeah, I'm looking
Yeah,
it up on
Xbox
Twitch.
360.
Oh, Ego Draconis. Okay, it was on 360. Interesting. Yeah, I've never heard of it.
Huh, that might be worth maybe finding an old copy of or something.
Larian Studios released 2010 January, and it doesn't look like there's no price on here, so I'm assuming it was physical only. It's not backwards compatible, so I'd have to play it on my 360. Yeah, it didn't even have a digital option. It was physical only, so I'd have to get a physical copy and play it on my 360. Which
That's crazy. That is crazy. But it's a third. Yeah, it's. I mean, you could probably look at some of the screenshots and you see it's a third person RPG. It's a little janky. It's the equivalent of what they like to call Slav jank, which is usually stuff that comes from the European countries, the Slavic European countries.
oh, okay,
But they, it's a good. It's still got a good heart in the center of it and a really good story.
cool. Well, I might have to keep that in mind and take a look at that at some point. But yeah, just when I have to like switch over to my 360 and I can't just play it via backwards compatibility on my series is always a pain.
Yeah, breaking out the old hardware is rough sometimes. But
I do still have it hooked up, but yeah,
yeah, I'm with you. I still have a Genesis plugged in because I like to throw Sonic in every once in a while.
nice. It's funny. Sonic, I swear, it gets mentioned on like every stream. I don't have anything against Sonic, just never having had a Genesis, I was never really big into the Sonic franchise.
Yeah, it's one of those old school side scrollers that was
I
really
did always
it was defined by gotta go fast, the meme.
I did think that Sonic was cooler than Mario, despite being a Nintendo kid.
Well, he was
Which
like,
was his whole point.
yeah, I think it was. I think it was meant like Sega was. They always were antagonistic in their ads too. And
Yeah.
Nintendo, I don't
Genesis
think.
does what Nintendo don't.
Yeah, exactly. I miss those days. That stuff was funny. You never saw PlayStation go, well, actually, you know what? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there were PlayStation ads where they went after Nintendo.
Yeah, I haven't seen any of those, but I wouldn't be surprised if there were.
Yeah, especially with America, we Blockbuster and a lot of other companies made a lot of goofy commercials back in the day. I There are channels on YouTube that are dedicated to 90s commercials. That's all they are, and they're
Yeah, I've
fantastic.
heard about that. Just recently, someone mentioned something like along those lines.
It's worth checking out. I bet that's something that Melee K and James would like. They would probably enjoy stuff like that.
That that might have been where I heard someone talk about it, because that definitely
Probably
would
we
make a
hear a
lot of
lot of
sense.
stuff in their chat and on their show.
Yeah, Vanquish is saying that he misses the rivalry between Nintendo and Sega. Yeah,
I do because it wasn't mean. It was fun.
yeah, it was good-hearted, lighthearted, ribbing of each other. Because when I had James and Kay on for the previous party chat, because the one that was just this last Saturday, that was episode 6. Party Chat episode 5, I had James and Kay on, and we were talking about. I was saying that I thought the like PlayStation 3, Xbox 360 era was like the peak of like the console wars. They're like, no, it was way older. It was like the Genesis, Super Nintendo era, and I had never really experienced it until more of the Xbox 360 era, but there definitely was a lot of it in, farther back. It's just it was kind of before I was plugged into that sort of culture stuff, so I didn't really see it.
Well, yeah, I'm with you. I wasn't quite a PC gamer until a little bit later. I didn't play like early Doom games or anything like that. I think the first game I played was Counter-Strike, which was in 2001, and that's probably the only like competitive first-person shooter because there is no real single player unless you played
Right.
Condition Zero on PC. That I've ever played and gotten into and wasted way too much time with. But
and I'm sure, given that you played a lot of, or I don't know if I could say a lot of Counter-Strike. Would you say you played a lot of Counter-Strike?
like over 3,000 hours probably.
Oh, so you have played a lot of Counter-Strike, and I'm sure you spent lots on all of those gun skins, right?
Absolutely not. Never once. I would never gamble. It was terrible. I
You
was
haven't.
given them though.
Okay, you mean you haven't spent more than you could buy a house for on a gun skin?
That stuff was, and people were going to websites like gambling websites and losing all their money there. And it's like, well, not their money, but all the stuff, the skins they had in game, and it
Yeah,
was
when
ridiculous.
I heard about people like buying gun skins in that game for like 40 grand. It's like, are you freaking crazy?
Okay, so you think that's crazy? Here's how good this was for me. I was given a skin, and somebody said it was worth $500, so I sold it on Steam for $500 and bought $500 worth of games.
That's the way to go.
Yep, I was like, "There's no way. There's like this is a perfect because why do I care about a skin?"
Yeah, it's like
I was terrible at the game. I was only fun with my friends. Playing against people that were better than me was often terrible. So you know how it went. You're
yeah,
better off playing with your friends that were just as bad as you were.
I played a little bit. I probably played Counter-Strike for maybe like a month or so, not very long, and it was only because one of my friends at school was into it. I do remember though, the cool thing, one of the things I thought was really cool was that Counter-Strike was the very first game I ever played with speech chat with someone else that was, on the other side of the internet. I thought that was pretty cool. I don't know if it was the first one that ever did it, but it was the first one that I played. And I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was definitely fun.
And Vanquish is saying that he was Team Sega back in the day. And yeah, Mortal Kombat on Genesis had blood, but the SNES version did not.
Yes, that
blood,
was
so I was Team Genesis.
that was definitely a benefit of the Genesis. Is you got a lot less censorship because Sega just did not care.
Yeah,
I think that was
Nintendo
something
wants to keep their more family friendly
yeah, I think
reputation.
Sega was trying to be the edgy one.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's like I said a minute ago. I think that's basically why Sonic was invented, because
He's
Mario's
literally
very
edgy. He's
yeah.
literally edgy.
Mario's this family friendly looking character, but they want something that's cool and hip and down with whatever the kids are into these days. So they made Sonic.
I remember. So okay, back in the day when I was a kid, you remember the stuff like Dare.
Oh yeah,
There was a thing about video
about
games.
the anti-drug thing.
Yeah, there was one that was like an anti-video games thing, and it was talking about how Sonic was an allegory for cocaine because he went really fast and he was really hyper.
That's
It was
funny.
so funny.
Back, I mean, there's still people who believe it now, but back in the height of video games are making kids do evil things. It's like, oh my God, spare me your lecture.
Yeah, video games for me were therapeutic, especially when I didn't have the ability when I was a kid to often go outside because of medical reasons. You might get an infection or something. So
sounds very Korean of you.
Yeah, well, the thing is, a lot of my friends were in the same situation, so we'd stay inside and play video games. That's a great way to bond with people, I think. I really do.
Yeah, I was
Sonic cocaine makes sense.
yeah, Paul's hopping. Sonic cocaine makes sense. Yeah, I was like I said, my first what got me into gaming was when my grandparents got me a Super Nintendo for Christmas one year. It came with Super Mario. That got me into gaming, and I was way I had friends that were into video games, but I was always way more into them than anyone else. So I was like, I didn't have like any other friends who were like as nerdy as I was for a long time. So I totally get that. Um, so when I mentioned a minute ago that it sounds very Quarian of you, are you a fan of or have played Mass Effect?
I have. I probably one of the best third person shooters. I
Oh,
think on the Xbox. I mean, I know it was on other stuff, but
yeah. It was originally an Xbox exclusive until EA bought it and then put it out on all other platforms as well. But yeah, Mass Effect is my single favorite video game franchise of all time. So I love it.
oh man, Vanquish just said something
Yeah,
about.
let's see this long text here. So let me tell you how crazy I was about Mortal Kombat. My family was going to Disneyland. The most excited thing for me was that I knew the arcade in Disneyland had a Mortal Kombat 3 machine. That's all I wanted to do.
Man,
That's really funny.
the yeah, no blood, of course.
No
The
blood, of
Mortal.
course. Is that Disneyland?
I spent hours and quarters at the arcade at our theater because it had a Mortal Kombat 3 machine. I think personally, Mortal Kombat 3 is my favorite,
Okay. Yeah,
which was on the Super Nintendo.
yeah. Well, yeah, like I said, fighting games is not one that I've ever been into, so I've never really played more than a couple minutes of Mortal Kombat. I want to
Oh
say it
yeah,
was 8 or 9 over at a friend's house. And arcades where I mean, I saw arcade machines when I was young, but it was kind of already on its way out. So I never really did much in
yeah.
arcades either. I played a couple of arcade games, seen
Did
plenty of
you
them, but never really played them.
did you ever see or play any that had the light guns on them?
Yeah, those were my favorites. Not that I played very many of them, but like I always thought light guns were cool. Like was it Time Crisis? I thought
Yeah,
was
Time
really cool.
Crisis was great. So on the Sega Saturn, I had a light gun and I had Virtua Cop 2.
That's the other one. I was just about to say, was Virtua Cop also a light gun shooter?
Yes, and I had it for the Sega Saturn. I had a big giant red light gun, and it was the funnest game, dude. I loved that game.
Okay, now that you mentioned that, that friend that I told you that was my one friend that had a Sega Saturn, I played Virtua Cop at his place too, not just that night's game. I do
Oh,
remember that
dude,
now.
that is awesome. That's such a great game to have played too because it was so unique.
And then,
I mean, it was a Time Crisis ripoff. Don't get me wrong; it was just a
yeah.
good one.
Hey, what's and Melee K is hopping in here. We've mentioned you a couple times. All good things. Hello. I'm assuming the fact that you're here means that you're done with your Melee Madness podcast. You're dropping in to say hi. I was just talking about this. I think last open mic with Gord King. I would love to have light gun games make a comeback. We're because correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the reason why they basically disappeared is because it in order for them to work had something to do with CRT TVs, and now that we don't have CRT TVs, light gun games don't work. I
And
believe that has something to do with it. I don't know why, but I
like
believe that has something to do with it, and that's why they disappeared.
that's why things like the Kinect and the Wiimote came out was to try and be replacements for that. For the
Yeah,
light gun, and unfortunately, nothing quite isn't quite the same as having a light gun.
yeah. I would love to see light gun games make a return. But
Absolutely.
yeah, at Dave and Buster's, that's all I play. And side note, um, I still so I was planning on doing Shredder's Revenge tomorrow. I may still. Still haven't decided whether I have to go on the website and see if there's even tickets left. But I still haven't decided whether I'm going to the Beast in Black concert that's in town that James and Kate just went to a few days ago. They're in my area, so I may go to that. And if I do, I won't be at the be playing TMNT tomorrow. So as soon as we're done with the stream here, I'm gonna hop on the website and see if there's still tickets available. because my buddy can't go. So if I do go, I'm going solo. But they were just talking about on one of the streams the other night. It's like if there's a show you want to go to, even if you don't have anybody to go with, like go solo. You probably won't regret it. So I'm probably going to go if there's still tickets available. And James hops in here as well. The newest House of the Dead in arcades is super good. And Vanquish agrees. And Vanquish also says, Time Crisis and Virtua Cop were my jam on Sega Saturn. But yeah, I'd love to see light gun games return because those were fun. So
yeah, definitely. Light gun games were also my jam, my friend.
Yeah, and James is saying Flight Han style baby flying solo. Yeah, I probably will if there's still tickets available. You can. That's what she says. It says you can always make new metal friends. Yeah.
Agreed.
So I've been.
Metal is awesome.
Yeah. Are you familiar with Beast in Black?
No, I haven't heard of them, but if you guys like it, then I have no problem checking them out. I like pretty much everything you guys do.
Yeah, I stumbled upon them a couple years ago. I don't even remember how, and I'm like, this band is awesome. So I started listening to them. And then just the other day that they said they were going to a show. I'm like, oh, what show are you going to? And they're like, Beast in Black. I'm like, oh my God, I love them. They're like, oh, look and see if they're going to be in your area. And I looked it up, and like 3 days later, they're, 20 minutes across town from me tomorrow. So, well, now that it's past midnight, it's now today.
What would be a good first song to listen to?
Let me pull that up because I text my buddy who is also a fan of metal, and I was like, he did not know the band either. So I listened through some of the songs. I'm like, and I sent him one of the songs. I'm like, hey, would you be up to seeing going to the show with me? It's only like $30. He can't make it, unfortunately. But the one that I sent him is Blade Runner. They've got lots of ones, but that's might be my favorite of theirs. I'm not really familiar with a lot of the names of the songs. I had to go and listen to some of them, but when I hear them, I'm like, oh, I love this one, or I love this one. But Blade Runner is one that I really like. And James says One Night in Tokyo is a good song from them. Right. I know I've listened to it, but I don't know which song that is off the top of my head. Oh man, I streamed their game the other day. They are amazing. I don't know which game he's referring to. A light gun game? No, I don't. I know. I kind of keep on top of what games he's streaming. I don't know what it was that he's referring to. Oh, Sweet True Lies. I freaking love that song. It's not quite as metal as some of their other songs, but I freaking love that one. That one I definitely know off the top of my head because that's probably one of my other favorites.
All right, I'm tabbing all these.
Yeah. Diehard metal fan since I was like 12. Beast in Black is like top 2 bands this year. Sweet. So yeah, we are popping in. Yeah, the fact that James and Kay are both here, they must have finished Melee Madness. So I paused it when I bounced out to start my stream. So after I'm done here, I'll probably listen to it. I don't know if I'll finish it tonight before I go to bed. But Beast in Black has a game. Oh, Beast in Black has a game? That's what you were saying you streamed. Okay. I did not know that. Interesting. I'll have to check that out. So, but yeah, we are already over 2 hours, and it doesn't seem like it's been 30 minutes. Time flies. No. Having fun.
No, it's been great, my friend. I have enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah, I just love talking to people about video games, and it always goes by way too fast. So I've greatly enjoyed our time as well. It is now past midnight our time because we are both in the same time zone, as are the Melee Games crew. So I've got more people in the Pacific time zone, so we can do more stuff super late night. Whereas a lot of people I talk to or stream with or game with are East Coast, so it's already like 3 a.m. over their time.
Oh yeah, that's true.
So, and he says, FatBeard is such a great dude, by the way. I'm going to have to listen to his VOD.
Sorry for the parts. Yeah, sorry for the parts where I dip out. Internet's a little on and off tonight.
It's been pretty good for the last half hour or so, but yeah, he's having some audio. I think it was upload speed issues where his audio was cutting out, but it wasn't so bad that you couldn't still comprehend what he was saying for most of it. But yeah, it was a fun discussion, and I know, FatBeard, you said you are wanting to start your channel. Do you have any thoughts if that might happen?
I think I'm going to have to go
subscribing to you.
I think I'm going to have to go twist my brother's arm and see if we can't do something fairly soon. Because I've enjoyed this, and I think it'd be fun.
Yeah, well, if you ever want to have me on to talk games, or you ever want to come back on and talk games, let me know. I am happy to go on other people's or have people on and just talk video games. That's what I love to do.
Well, I really appreciate it, man. It's been good. Plus, it's nice to know there's someone who is interested in all these weird little series that I've been into.
Yeah, if you want to look at my, like I said, I'm an Xbox guy, so and I haven't played anything but Xbox since basically 2006 when I got my 360. So you can go on my True Achievements page and look through my entire history of games and see everything that I've played if you're interested in something like that.
Is that only for Xbox or does it work for other platforms?
They do have a PlayStation trophies and a Steam achievements page too, but I don't have any in either of those, so I don't have an account on those. But they do exist. If it'll scan your PlayStation profile and your Steam profile and track your games and your completion percentage and how many you've completed and what achievements you've gotten, which ones are the most difficult, all sorts of crazy interesting stats.
There is there I did want to mention there is one thing that I do know of. It's a site that tracks how long you've played all your games for on Steam. And it's
Okay.
called steamtime.info, I think. Yeah. It says on mine I've wasted 5,500 hours.
Yeah, the on True Achievements, they didn't have time tracking on Xbox 360 games, but there is time tracking built into Xbox One and forward. So, on if you've played, oh, True Achievements is down right now, so I can't check. But you can go and look at your game collection, and you can see your total amount of hours in all your games that have time tracking enabled. So something very similar to that, which I'm assuming the PlayStation and the Steam versions of True Achievements have that as well. I just, like I said, don't have either of those, so I can't tell you. But it's basically the same website, just redesigned for PlayStation trophies and Steam achievements.
Yeah.
Oh, James says that site scares me. Oh Lord, because he doesn't want to know how many hours he spent either.
Yeah, especially on Steam. Because the thing is, the Steam account that I have right now is not the one I've had for the past 15 years. So
Oh,
I
okay.
don't want to know what that one is.
Nah, FatBeard, that's 5,000 hours well spent. I would agree, Vanquish.
Yes, agreed. Video games, we should they're better than they're better than oh wow.
Dear
Oh wow.
Lord, just 5,500. My girlfriend has 8,000 in arcs alone. That is nuts. I can't
Oh,
imagine spending 8,000 hours in one game. That's
well, let
ridiculous.
your girlfriend know that there's a kindred spirit. I have 8,000 hours in the original Guild Wars.
Guild Wars, okay. And yeah, James is terrified to learn how many hours he has on WoW,
Yeah,
which
wow. I
was,
can imagine probably a lot.
I believe, when they were on Party Chat episode 5, one of the topics we had was what game have you spent more. Oh no, that was a few episodes before, but I brought it up so we could talk about it. What game have you spent the most time in? And James was like, yeah, definitely WoW.
Mine's got to be Guild Wars. Guilty
Yeah.
pleasure, and had a lot of high school buddies that played it.
I had some buddies that played Guild Wars too, and it was cool that it was, you pay up front for the game, but and the expansions, but there was no like monthly service fee, kind of like WoW did, right?
Yeah, it's just you pay for and it's still the same way. You the first expansion is free now, but the other expansions are just whatever their price is, and that's it.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. Well, almost about 2 hours 10 minutes. So I think we'll wrap it up here. But thank you for coming on. And like I said, happy to come on if you want to talk, or if you want to ever come back and talk video games, let me know. Same to anyone in the chat. You ever want to come on and just talk video games with me? Let me know. Love to have you on and just talk video games, because that's the point of my channel. Everyone in the chat I've had on my channel except Vanquish. I messaged you on Twitter like weeks ago, or maybe it was Discord, one of the two. If you ever want to talk video games, I want to have you on and chat. So let me know if that's something you want to do. And he says most time he spent is between Rainbow Six Siege and Witcher 3. Cool.
Excellent games. Excellent games.
I've not played Siege, as I was a little disappointed in the direction they took it. I was a fan of the Vegas games, and then they turned it into a competitive shooter, so I wasn't quite a fan, too keen on that.
Yeah,
But
I agreed. By the way, the Vegas ones are best Rainbow Six games.
I love the Vegas games. And I was super excited for what was going to be the sequel before it became Rainbow Six Siege was Rainbow Six Patriots. That looked awesome.
Yes, it
And then they
did.
scrapped it. And James says he respect for Guild Wars. And Witcher is a fantastic game. I have 2 and 3. I have not. I played a little bit of them. I do plan to play them at some point. They are also in my backlist. And James says, "Your next Vanquish to be on the open mic." Yes. Witcher would be a good anime. Cool. And James says, "Vegas, baby." So, all right. Well, thank you for joining me tonight. And for everyone who was in the chat, thank you for joining me for another open mic. The next thing I have next week, my open mic is going to be similar to last week in order to accommodate Gord King's schedule. We had open mic on Tuesday night. Next week is going to be similar thing. Let me check the schedule. It is going to be on Tuesday night. Let's see. Nope, wrong page. Open mic. Yes, Tuesday, the 3rd. Is that? Yes, the 3rd. And I think we're going to be, we haven't settled on specifically time, but I believe it's going to be 6 o'clock Pacific. And my guest for the next open mic is Extra Zero. I finally got him to make some time to come on and talk video games with me. So tune in to Party Chat next Tuesday, the 3rd. And Extra Zero and I will be talking video games. So again, I had an excellent time talking with you. And I love seeing all my good friends in the chat. And I will talk to you guys all later. And in the meantime, game on.
Take it easy, everybody. And thank you very much, my friend.
You're welcome.